Bookish friends, welcome to my August wrap-up part 2. This video will consist of three separate sections. In the first part, I will talk about my monthly statistics about the books that I finished in the month of August. And in the second part, I will talk about the 8 books that I finished in the second half of August. And in the third part, first of all, I will talk about how I did in my yearly reading challenges that I'm doing, which are series about series and Read Christie 2021. And lastly, I will talk about my progress in my own reading challenge, Berna's Bookish Bingo. In the month of August, I read a total number of 13 books. I read 3 romance books, 2 historical fiction, 2 general fiction, 2 science fiction, 1 fantasy, 1 mystery, 1 thriller, and 1 comedy. I read a total number of 3,544 pages. I read 1 book less than 100 pages. 3 books between the pages of 100 and 200, 2 books between 200 and 300 pages, 5 books between 300 and 400 pages, and 2 books between 400 and 500 pages. My average page number per book amounted to 272.61 pages. I read 1 book published in 1950s, 2 books published in 1960s, 1 book published in 1970s, 1 book published in 1980s, 1 book published in 1990s, 3 books published between the years of 2000 and 2009, 1 book published between 2010 and 2014, 2 books published between 2015 and 2020, and 1 book published in 2021. I read 10 books originally written in English and 1 book each originally written in Turkish, Swedish, and Norwegian. I read the Swedish and the Norwegian books in their Turkish editions. I read 10 novels, 1 short story collection, 1 novella, and 1 play. I read 10 books targeted towards adults, 2 books targeted towards middle grade, and 1 book targeted towards young adults. I read 8 ebooks, 4 audiobooks, and 1 paperback. I rated 1 book 6 out of 10, 4 books 7 out of 10, 7 books 8 out of 10, and 1 book 10 out of 10. My average rating for the books that I finished in August was 7.69, which was quite a good average compared to the other months. The first book that I finished was Nasrettin Hoca, Gülütler by Aziz Nissen. I made a dedicated Turkish shelf video about this book. Aziz Nissen is one of the beloved authors in my country who wrote books in many different genres, and this one is the collection of anecdotes belonging to Nasrettin Hoca, who is a Turkish folk hero who's known for his wit and his adaptable answers to every situation. I gave this collection a 7 out of 10. If you want to know this little book of anecdote collection, you can watch my Turkish shelf video. I then finished the 7th book in the Bridgerton series. It's In His Kiss by Julia Quinn. I'm reading this series because I chose this book as a series to binge read in the month of February from my series cup. And I'm really enjoying this series. This book talked about the love story between the youngest child, Hyacinth, and Garrett, who is the grandson of my favorite character in the series, Lady Danbury. I liked the dynamic between the couple and their interaction with each other. Although some parts could have been a bit shorter in my opinion. And moreover, I really enjoyed the parts in which secondary characters are featured. Hyacinth's family, which we know very well since we read 6 previous books in the series. Also, the parts Lady Danbury was present, I think shown while I was reading the book. And to sum it up, I actually gave the romance of this couple a 7 out of 10, but I added an additional point for the excellent portrayal of Lady Danbury in this book and gave it an 8 out of 10. I then finished my book club book, The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a science fiction classic. It's the story of an envoy who comes to a planet in which both sexes are represented in the residents of the planet, and there are no genres, generalizations or anything like that in that planet. And this envoy tries to convince the residents in this planet, and especially the king, to join an alliance of planets. He forms a friendship with the king's right-hand man, and then political intrigues happen, and both of them are considered outcasts in the country. I read another book by Ursula K. Le Guin before, Late of Heaven, and I really enjoyed that book and gave it 9 out of 10. And actually, Ursula K. Le Guin was one of the top 5 authors that I loved in the year of 2019. So I had very high expectations from this book. But unfortunately, although the plot was exciting, I was really bored with the execution of the book. The description of ice and the harsh conditions, I think, was so in detail. It really did not fulfill the original intent of making us feel impressed by the hardship of the conditions, the climatic conditions, but made us feel very, very bored while reading it because of so many details, and almost nothing happens in 2/3 of the book. And my book club friends also thought the same. Even the ones who are more character-driven readers than plot-driven readers. This book was a disappointment for all of us, actually. But of course, I have not given up on Ursula K. Le Guin just because of one book. I think I will read her fantasy series. I have heard it is a much more plot-driven story. In summary, I gave this book a 6 out of 10, which was the lowest rated book of August. And then I finished my Agatha Christie book of the month, They Came to Baghdad. In this book, our heroine falls in love with a man that she saw on the cafe and follows him to Baghdad. And in Baghdad, she's just thrown into the events that includes murder and many other evil doings. When I first started the book, I was really confused in the first third of the book. Because there were many characters which did not seem to connect with each other, and I couldn't really identify who was who except the main heroine. But when the heroine arrived in Baghdad and started meeting all of these seemingly unconnected characters, the story was very engaging for me, and I was very impressed by how much Agatha Christie loved archaeology, how she described the excavations, and also the heroine's interest in archaeology, and also her love interest was described really heartfelt. So it was clear that she was inspired by her own life while writing this book. And I have to say, I loved the ending of the book. I gave this book an 8 out of 10. After that, I finished a play, a very short play by Neil Simon, The Odd Couple. I listened to this play. In this play, a poker buddy of a man separates from his wife, and then 2 middle-aged men with very different characteristics start living together. While I was listening to this book, I giggled a lot because it was very funny. It wasn't ha-ha funny maybe, but it was funny in my style. because it was recorded from an actual stage presentation. It was an exceptional audiobook performance. I would really advise this play if you're feeling low, because that day was actually a very hard day for me at work, and I returned to my home with a smile on my face because of this play. So that's why I gave this play, and also an 8 out of 10. I then finished the arc that was kindly given to me by the Book Sirens for an honest review. The Normandy Club by Will Walker. This book, Nazi sympathizers in 1993 decide to time travel back to 1944 and change the course of the World War II, in which the Germany wins the war. Our hero tries to prevent this occurrence by returning back once again. This book had all the science fiction elements that I liked in a book: time travel and changing of the history by creating an alternate timeline. It was also very fast-paced and the writing was really good. I have heard that Will Walker wrote screenplays for movies and TV series, and this clearly showed in the excellent pacing of the book. The only complaint that I have of this book is the two-dimensional secondary female characters. They were only defined by their attraction to men. It was not the case for the main heroine of the story, but if those characters had been more developed, I think this could have been one of my favorite books of 2021. After that, I finished another thriller. I read this thriller with Naomi at Naomi's bookshelf and Nikki at Red Dot Reads. We read Cockroaches by Jo Nesbo together, the second book in Harry Hall's series. In this book, Harry Hall is sent to Thailand to solve the murder of the envoy of Norway. During this investigation, he encounters different sides of Thailand and the crime syndicates there, which includes pedophilia, mafia, child abuse, domestic abuse, prostitution, illegal funds, and etc. This book was much better than the first book in the series. When I read the first book, The Bat, I thought it was a decent thriller, but I really could not understand why this series was so beloved in all around the world. But when I read this book, which is said to be better than the first book, but still not as good as the later books in the series, I could finally understand the love for this series, because although the pacing could have been a little better, I thought the structure of the mystery and the cleverness of the murderer was portrayed excellently in this book. And even though I read a Turkish edition, I thought the writing style was much more clearer, in my opinion, of course. And lastly, I loved the body reading experience with Naomi and Nikki. We made sort of wild guesses, and I have to say we weren't successful in guessing who the murderer was, and we plan to read the next book in the series in the near future. But I have to give a content warning for many things: pedophilia, physical violence, sexual assault, physical assault, some gory scenes. So this is not a thriller book for everyone, but if you can bear such scenes, I think it is a very good thriller which will make you fly through the pages. And thus I also gave this book an 8 out of 10. The last book that I finished in the month of August was Mrs. Palfery at the Claremont by Elizabeth Taylor. I read this book as a booktuber recommendation. This book was recommended by Lynn's Vintage World. In this book, Mrs. Palfery goes to reside in a hotel that serves the elderly people. When Mrs. Palfery moves there, she talks about her grandson, Desmond. And when he does not come to see her, she asks for the help of a young man who prevented her fall one day when she was taking a walk. And this young man and Mrs. Palfery form a very unlikely friendship. First of all, I would like to thank Lil for introducing me to the wonderful writing of Elizabeth Taylor. Although I gave this book a 7 out of 10, it was not because I didn't like her writing style. I actually enjoyed her writing style very much. She described daily events with such care and such beauty. I loved it. The reason that I gave this book a 7 out of 10 was because I really didn't like the character of Mrs. Palfery. I thought she was very cold towards her friends in the Claremont, and I sort of thought she was arrogant. Her feelings towards that young man really made me cringe a bit. But I'm sure I will have a lot more to like in her other works, and I will definitely read more from Elizabeth Taylor. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'm doing 2 yearly reading challenges this year. One of them is Read Christie 2021. For this challenge, I am reading Agatha Christie books that would fit in certain prompts. They came to Baghdad, fitted the prompt of a story featuring love perfectly, because love was the motivator of our heroine going to Baghdad. I have fulfilled 8 of the prompts by reading 8 Agatha Christie books, which I did for the previous 8 months, of course. And the second reading challenge that I'm doing is series about series. For this challenge, I read 3 books belonging to a series. I read Is in His Kiss, which is the 7th book in Bridgerton series by Julia Quinn. I read Baird Science, which is the 3rd book in Winston Brothers series by Penny Reid. And lastly, I read Cockroaches, which was the 2nd book in Harry Hole series by Jo Nesbo. I'm very close to reading 42 books belonging to a series, and I reached my goal of reading books from 21 series. I'm doing exceptionally well with this goal, I think. And lastly, for my Bernaz Bookish bingo, I've managed to put 4 of the books that I read in the second half of August to one of the prompts. I read It's in His Kiss for the prompt of historical romance. I read Left Hand of Darkness for the prompt of science fiction. I read They Came to Badat for a book with a city name in the title. And lastly, I read The Normandy Club for a book with alternate history. And for the month of September, I only have 5 prompts to fill. So this was my lengthy August wrap-up part 2. Please comment down below, have you read any of the books that I mentioned in this video? And also, I really would like to know about your favorite book in August. If you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, since the book that made me most happy in August was The Odd Couple, I thought couple should be the word of the day. Couple means çift in Turkish, and çift is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.